Yes, excellent. Well, thank you all for joining, taking the time to tune in. We pulled this press conference together because the world is grappling with unprecedented crises, climate change, pandemics, natural disasters, genocides, wars, and skyrocketing inequality that are threatening the future of humanity. Unfortunately, our governing institutions do not seem to be ready for this task. The world is a far cry from the Second World War, post-era consensus of the 20th century. Global governance is mired in escalating geopolitical confrontations between Western powers and the rising influence of China and Russia. Meanwhile, transnational corporations wield disproportionate control over policy decisions, prioritizing profits at the expense of people and the planet. Democratic participation within the multilateral system has eroded, with decisions concentrated in the hands of a few powerful countries and corporate stakeholders. The voices of the global south are marginalized and ignored. The UN, once a beacon of hope for international cooperation, is now paralyzed by these dynamics. The upcoming Summit of the Future risks becoming yet another exercise in maintaining the status quo, legitimizing an economy for billionaires and seemingly promising to recover the lofty vision of multilateralism. But between people and their democratic institutions is a huge chasm, the rift that is caused by the takeover of public spaces and of governance arrangements by corporations. The rise of big tech as the panacea for all our problems has further compounded the governance crisis. The outcomes of the Summit of the Future are but a reflection of a multilateral system under siege, where democratic deliberation and rationality of public reason have little space. So in tackling these issues, we have with us three experts on this matter. Martín Drago has been a member of Redes, Friends of the Earth Uruguay, since 2004, and co-coordinates Friends of the Earth International's Food Sovereignty Program. He advocates for agroecology and food sovereignty while opposing agribusiness, land grabbing, and corporate capture. He helped launch the global campaign to reclaim people's sovereignty in 2012. Gonzalo Verón, a fellow at the Trasnational Institute, holds a PhD in political science from the University of Sao Paulo and has been active in international campaigns against corporate power since the 2000s. He helped launch the global campaign to reclaim people's sovereignty in 2012. Anita Gurumurthy is the executive director of IT for Change, leading work on data governance, artificial intelligence, and digital justice. She serves on several expert bodies, including co-chairing the T20 Digital Transformation Group and contributing to the UN's Technology Facilitation Group. Thank you for joining us today and taking the time. My name is Catherine Pilishvili. I am the digital strategist for the International Network for Economic, Social, and Cultural Rights, ESCRNet, based in New York, and I will be moderating today's conversation. So if we're all ready, we can just jump right into the questions that we have for you. Martín, this first question is for you. Is the multilateral system achieving its initial goals in this context of multiple crises?
Bueno, buenos días para todos y todas. Muchas gracias por aceptar nuestra invitación. Y yendo a la pregunta de Catherine, como ella decía en su introducción, la Organización de Naciones Unidas fue creada al terminar la Segunda Guerra Mundial para promover la paz y la seguridad mundiales, para crear un foro en que los miembros pudieran resolver pacíficamente las disputas, derrocar la agresión, promover el proceso social y proteger los derechos humanos. Una organización que fue creada para funcionar en base a 5 principios: el respeto a la soberanía y la integridad territorial de los Estados miembros, la no injerencia en los asuntos internos de los Estados miembros, la igualdad de derechos y libre determinación de los pueblos, la relación amistosa entre las naciones y la cooperación en la solución de problemas internacionales. Y a casi 80 años de la creación de esta organización, vemos un creciente consenso global, incluyendo a las agencias de Naciones Unidas, a los gobiernos, de la necesidad de avanzar hacia una agenda común para responder a los retos actuales y futuros que enfrentan los pueblos y el planeta. El problema es cuáles son los caminos, y no necesariamente la asunción de que tenemos que hacer algo, sino el cómo. Y lo que se ha estado proponiendo últimamente desde Secretaría General de Naciones Unidas es que para poder encontrar esas agendas comunes para enfrentar los retos que tenemos por delante, hay que transformar el multilateralismo, hay que avanzar, como dicen, hacia un multilateralismo revitalizado que pueda influir positivamente en la vida de las personas, y para eso promueve un multilateralismo de múltiples partes interesadas, o multi-stakeholderismo, como lo llamamos nosotros, que es lo que promueve el Foro Económico Mundial, y que es parte de la materialización del acuerdo firmado entre el Foro Económico Mundial y Naciones Unidas en 2018, y al que hemos denunciado desde ese momento centenares de organizaciones, ¿no? Entonces, la respuesta o los caminos para encontrar una respuesta a las crisis que enfrentamos son el involucramiento, o es el involucramiento del sector privado, de las empresas transnacionales, en la toma de decisiones, ¿no? Para resumir. Entonces, a casi 50 años, o más de 50 años, casi 52 en este momento, del discurso del presidente Salvador Allende ante Naciones Unidas, cuando alertaba la creciente intromisión de las empresas transnacionales en la toma de decisiones, se avanza en ese sentido, en el que Allende, o se profundiza, mejor dicho, el avance en el sentido de que Allende denunciaba, ¿no? Y este no es un tema nuevo, las empresas transnacionales tienen una larga historia complicada de incidencia en el multilateralismo, primero de manera indirecta, después y de diversas formas, después de manera más directa, con participación, y ahí la Conferencia de Río sobre Medio Ambiente y Desarrollo del año 92 es un punto de inflexión, porque se invita a las empresas transnacionales a ser actores de esas conversaciones. Pero bueno, también tuvieron retrocesos en su momento, como la Organización Mundial de la Salud, donde no se las dejó participar en la elaboración del Tratado sobre Tabaco. En fin, entonces, en ese marco, este proceso actual intenta profundizar la participación de las empresas transnacionales ya en la toma de decisiones, y esta cumbre del futuro, desde nuestro punto de vista, promueve ese proceso de legitimación y legalización, casi diríamos, de la participación directa y formal de las corporaciones transnacionales y organizaciones filantrópicas en la mesa de toma de decisiones de los espacios de Naciones Unidas. No es, a nuestro entender, una privatización de la toma de decisiones. Y entonces lo que se nos presenta es la solución a las múltiples crisis que implementamos. Tienen que sentar a la mesa para encontrar las salidas a aquellos que nos han creado la crisis, ¿no? Ya no los países del norte global, sino también las empresas transnacionales. Y además es un proceso que está evitando permanentemente discutir las causas estructurales de las crisis que vivimos, ¿no? Y el rol de los actores centrales de este modelo. Entonces, en definitiva, el multilateralismo que fue creado, el de Naciones Unidas, que fue creado para encontrar un espacio de diálogo entre gobiernos, para encontrar salidas comunes, respetando derechos básicos y los principios que mencionaba antes, no está presente hoy en día, o mejor dicho, está siendo atacado profundamente, e intentando transformarlo en un foro completamente distinto.
Thank you, Martín. Gonzalo, how are these problems disproportionately affecting certain communities and countries, for instance, in the Global South?
Yeah, hello everyone. Thank you, Catherine, and it's good to share some ideas with a lot of friends that I'm seeing in the joining us. Greetings from rainy São Paulo and from Trasnational Institute. We've been working around these issues for a long time, as you mentioned when you introduced myself. Our concern about the violation of human rights, of people's and communities' rights by transnational corporation is a long concern, a long-lasting concern, and that's something that really have been mobilizing the Trasnational Institute and our team in particular. So what we see is that there is a series of factors involving the operation of economic powers around the multilateral system that led to a misfunction of it, and that is impacting mostly in those who have less, meaning the poorer part of the population of the world and the poorer countries, or the developing countries as they are called, for very natural or simple reasons. That is that they have less resources to face the different crises that are happening in the world. Concretely, we have recently seen, and in Brazil and many countries of our region, we see the impacts of the climate change and the incapacity of the global governance mechanisms to deal with that. And it's simple because the impacts in our region, and we saw that daily, that are huge now. Well, now it's raining, but until now the drought was fatal, with a lot of burning and fire all over Brazil. And it's clear that we cannot live with us, and we are more impacted. Our population, our environment is more impacted because the obvious reason of lack of resources and so. And I'm speaking from Brazil, that we are not a simple poor country, but we have obviously less resources, and that's how the lack of mechanism or measures or ways of funding agreements for global policies is impacting us. We saw that with the pandemics, of course, because the pandemic was clearly showing us how the multilateral system, I mean the global government of the planet, couldn't deal with this. And we saw how at the very end the only ones that really benefit on the cost of millions of losses were the big labs, the big pharmaceutical, that make exceptional profits with that. No, here in Brazil, it's another bad example of how many people we lost because of not timely answers to that. And another effect that is obviously impacting in a different way was the debt. After the collapse of many of our economies around the pandemic, our countries got deeply, or the debts of our countries really grew. And of course, we see many of developing and poorer countries facing that problem, and the system not giving them the proper answer to that, and resisting, since they are controlled by northern countries, to give better solutions to the debt problem. No, and finally, of course, there is the problem of job and precarity and so on and so forth, and the asymmetries in terms of incomes, no, that really impacting more in our countries, and that plus some security or crisis are also pushing for the mobilization or the move of people and migrants searching for better options, or even running away from wars and so on and so forth. And that's of course something that is being a huge problem among our people. So what we see is that that we need, I mean, the lack of global answers or global policies is really impacting those who have less, or who are in worse situation. And of course, that's mostly people living in the South and in developing countries. Thank you.
Thank you, Gonzalo. Anita, this next question is for you. Are transnational corporations capable of building solutions to today's challenges, and why shouldn't they be part of decision-making?
Good question. Just to, set the scorecard right, Microsoft's value is larger than the GDP of global powerhouses, which include Brazil, Canada, Russia, South Korea. Unfortunately, this statistic, the staggering implication of what this means no longer raises eyebrows, and that's really the problem. We think transnational corporations, particularly digital corporations, which is an area where IT for Change, my organization, works, are actually solution providers. And we kind of confer this kind of halo on these corporations to tackle our foundational challenges. And these challenges are in very core areas like universalizing education. So if the pandemic really wreaked havoc on schools, on the ability of schools to deliver, we said, let's get the edtech companies, right? Similarly, we feel we have to address leakages in public services delivery. We need efficient services. We say, okay, bring in the AI systems. And doesn't matter what it really means for inclusion, for inequality, or even in the case of those who actually lack access to digital devices, right? So by handing over social infrastructures to these entities, we hand over the control we have as people over the public domain. As people, who are we? We're profoundly powerful, right? Because we really have access to the collective, which we define as the public, right? And we must remember that tech corporations are empires. They're not republics. We are the republic. We imagine there is no other way than to invite these transnational corporations to solve the world's problems, and this is a blind spot. And the question certainly is not about capability. The question is about accountability and about what we value: people or profit, intergenerational well-being or greed. I just read an article which said that major tech corporations must be hiding the statistics, maybe hiding the statistics of what their energy consumption is doing really to natural resources through their data centers. And the differences in statistics between what's being reported and what's the real consumption may be 650%. So what we need to realize is that the resource crunch in the multilateral system that Gonzalo described is because of an unjust global system. We need to tax these companies, appeal to the good sense of the rich countries to contribute to ODA, and we need the rule of law so that a more powerful, more empowered UN, which is people-centric, and need not turn to these corporations to rescue the world, right? And all these are powerful lobbies inside the multilateral system who can then go and define priorities for the people. And these priorities are not people's priorities. I'll stop here.
Thank you. And to add to that, how does big tech influence governmental and multilateral processes?
Okay, to start with, let's talk about the UN. Big tech corporations basically intervene in processes of democracy. They function at a level, these are meso-level spaces where narrative power is captured. And oftentimes, because of the way they hold sway over public infrastructures, they capture the destinies of people of the global south. We saw this in the COVID pandemic when the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, as part of the Gavi Alliance, preserved corporate patents, argued for the patents regime in the pharma sector, leaving many countries out in the cold with respect to vaccine supply. So even with the digital revolution, we see a new kind of nexus, a nexus between big tech, big pharma, and big agri. Actually, pharma companies are, self-declaring themselves as data companies, right? So this kind of nexus is deepening. We are seeing a new era of philanthrocapitalism inside the UN, and this is going to promote neo-colonial dependencies in the global order. And how? Because at the national level, these corporations gain agenda-setting power. They make rules that suit them. And just like Special Rapporteur Philip Alston on poverty declared a couple of years ago, these corporations operate in a human rights free zone. They're more powerful than states and they replace essential public functions. Just a couple of days ago, the newly appointed special rapporteur on the promotion of truth and justice has declared that all the misinformation of social media is a growing global challenge of negationism and revisionism of past human rights violations. So countries, we want to erase social memory. We want these corporations to take over the business of, social knowing, the cognition of society, the memory of society. And this is profoundly harmful to intergenerational rights. And the Declaration of Future Generations that's coming out in the next week really is about preserving a world of memory and historicity. And this is really going away, and that is bad for societies.
Thank you, Anita. So that being said, Gonzalo, what is the Summit of the Future's role in addressing today's challenges? We know it's just around the corner. Is the summit promoting changes to the multilateral system, or does it represent a risk to the system? And a third part to that, what are the major outcomes of such a complex process, and what's coming after, thinking about the pact of the future?
Sorry, thank you very much for the question, Catherine. Now, what I have to say is the following. The Summit of the Future is a reaction to the crisis of multilateralism, meaning that they know that there is a problem, and it's so obvious that there is a problem that they want to try to move forward with some solution. The problem is that they are not really digging, let's say, into the causes of and the reasons of the problem, and that's the case with the Summit of the Future. They fail in addressing the SDGs. I mean, because the SDGs per se, you may say that they are okay because they were built in another way and so on and so forth. But they impose and they put inside the SDGs, the Sustainable Development Goals in 2015, many super ambitious goals that are not achievable, mostly because they are developed countries are not committed to fund the necessary policies that are needed to achieve those SDGs. And among others, they are failed because of they count a lot on on the private sector to achieve that. That concept, that is the concept embedded in multi-stakeholderism, is there as well for the Summit of the Future. Because there is that means that they believe that the private sector could provide the solutions, but they are not aware or they are hiding the fact that states should lead that, and states that are really committed with the public goods and with the public welfare and people's welfare and so on and so forth. In that regard, the Summit of the Future is another theatrical, I could say, moment of a novel that we've been seeing for the last 30 years. I mean, they try to they address a problem. They do not address the real causes of the problem, and they simulate. That was why I call it theatrical, that they are committed to solve the problem. Unfortunately, the Summit of the Future is kind of a new example of that. I could say that we had some expectation that could work. We were super concerned about the fact that it could be another of the threat of being captured, let's say, with multi-stakeholder mechanisms, and another attempt to do that and to set that as the new normal. There is a kind of a piece of that battle that we won, mostly because developing countries block that, but it's a permanent war, and it's there in the last draft that is the Rep 4. No, so we don't have multi-stakeholderism there, but we have the omnipresence of the private sector as part of the solution, as Anita said. The problem is that what we saw in Rep 4, that is the last version of the Pact for the Future, is another catalog of problems and promises. And in that sense, it's so disappointing because the problems are still there, but no solution is easily seen, or this pact is not bringing concrete solutions to concrete problems that our people is living. Thank you.
Thank you, Gonzalo. One of the big outputs of the Summit of the Future will be the Global Digital Compact. Anita, can you explain what the Global Digital Compact is, and will it be enough to build an equitable digital future for people and the planet?
So to begin with, I think we need to understand what's coming out of the Summit of the Future. It's a kind of an agreement among member states, which is going to be called the Pact of the Future. And the Global Digital Compact is one of the chapters which will be annexed to the Pact of the Future. So this, it must be remembered, is not really of the value of binding rules. It's not like the economic system, which has binding rules, but it is actually quite valuable because it articulates the parameters, even if they are not binding, but these parameters give directions for the future or the present of international digital cooperation. So it's some kind of beginning. What needs to be emphasized is what Gonzalo and Martin have underscored, that we do really need a rule-based global system for many things, including the digital. But well, I think the Global Digital Compact does start with a great preamble. It has, it invokes extremely inspirational language. It acknowledges that we don't live in an equal world. But I think where it falls flat and where it fails is where the rubber hits the road, because its methodologies rely on a failed playbook of neoliberal economics. It places extraordinary faith in the market, in the private sector, to enable people to get connected. Of course, research after research in the past 2 decades has told us that all the evidence is telling you that digital infrastructure development cannot be left to the hands of the market. We need public investments. We need public infrastructure. Now, more than connectivity, we actually have another pot of gold, right? That pot of gold is called data, right? And even in the area of data flows, cross-border data flows, unfortunately, the present version, which is the final version of the Global Digital Compact, seems to advocate hyperliberalization. So the whole idea is let data be free, let it flow anywhere and everywhere. But we know the truth, right? There are some places that are actually sites of extraction of data, which is the Global South. And this ignores the deeper question of who controls data resources, where is people's sovereignty, what are the linkages between control over data resources and local innovation. If you didn't have innovation, all your right to science, right to participate in future markets, right to be self-sufficient, right to exercise self-determination over your culture, all of this is gone. So this is where I think we're all disappointed. And unfortunately, I think this is business as usual. And we see the largest digital transnational corporations writing the rules here, and the rich countries backing these corporations, because there's much to lose if you actually destabilize the status quo, right? And so to conclude, I think 20 years after the World Summit on the Information Society, which was the first ever meeting in 2005 in the UN, which decided to think about principles and norms for the information age, we are seeing another pact. And this pact really is not something that gives inspiration and hope to the people. It is status quoist, and it really endorses a kind of a hollow and shallow multi-stakeholderism, and unfortunately allows the plunder of data resources in the South by digital transnational corporations. That is at the heart of inequality in the current order. It also provides absolutely no concrete direction in the area of internet governance. We all know that the ICANN, which is of course an independent entity, is located physically in the United States, and the task and the agenda of ensuring jurisdictional immunity for ICANN from the United States is still an open agenda. And that really leaves all these questions about the future, about who really controls the global infrastructures of the internet, really as an open question that makes people's movements very uncomfortable. I'll stop here.
Thank you. Martin, what could democratic global governance look like? And what would be the role of civil society and social movements in such governance?
Sorry, I was mute. Thanks, Catherine, for the question. It's a question that we don't have our, let's say, own answer, and we want to. Sorry, I started to speak in English, but I'm going to speak in Spanish. Really sorry. No, decía que esta es una respuesta que queremos construir colectivamente con organizaciones y movimientos sociales a lo largo del planeta. Tenemos nuestras propias ideas y principios sobre los que construir, pero entendemos que esa construcción tiene que respetar las diversidades que incluye este planeta. Pero lo que sí es importante, es central a nuestro entender, es pensar más allá de la realpolitik, ¿no? y tener una visión más allá de un mundo dominado por las potencias imperiales y coloniales o neocoloniales y por las grandes transnacionales, ¿no? Necesitamos pensar en un mundo que no sea dominado por esas fuerzas, y eso requiere construir esa visión, esa mirada, pero también las propuestas concretas para desmantelar el poder corporativo, el poder de las transnacionales y su impunidad, pero también para construir alternativas y procesos de toma de decisiones inclusivos y democráticos, ¿no? Quizás la visión de los países no alineados, construidas a partir de la mitad de la década del 50 del siglo pasado, nos ayude, ¿no? Esto de garantizar la independencia nacional, la soberanía, la integridad territorial y la seguridad nacional, para poder desmantelar el imperialismo, el colonialismo o el neocolonialismo en estos días, el racismo y todas las diferentes formas de agresión y opresión, ocupación, dominación que estas fuerzas extranjeras han tenido sobre muchos territorios, y también para construir alianzas para ir contra la política de las grandes potencias y esos bloques, ¿no? Entonces, esa puede ser una buena guía sobre la que construir, ¿no? O desde la que construir. En definitiva, necesitamos un multilateralismo en que todos los países sean iguales, ¿no? En el que, como buscaban Naciones Unidas desde el inicio, los conflictos se traten a través de la diplomacia y no a través de las armas o de la presión comercial o de los conflictos comerciales que muchas veces llevan a conflictos armados. En definitiva, el principio de igualdad entre todos los países es central para nosotros, ¿no? Los gobiernos, a nuestro entender, son los legítimos representantes para tomar decisiones en Naciones Unidas. El sistema tiene muchas cosas a cambiar, pero ese no es una de las cosas a cambiar. Los representantes de los pueblos tienen que ser claros y tienen que ser elegidos por los pueblos, pero también esta nueva, digamos, ONU 3.0, como estamos llamando, tiene que incluir espacios para que participen los movimientos sociales, las organizaciones sociales a nivel de Naciones Unidas, pero que eso también se tiene que reflejar en los procesos nacionales, locales o regionales, y en los que no se pueda permitir la participación de aquellos que tienen intereses directamente vinculados a las tomas de decisiones, ¿no? En definitiva, lo que queremos es un multilateralismo basado en los intereses de los y les titulares de derechos humanos, económicos, sociales, culturales, ambientales y no de los titulares, de los intereses de los titulares de acciones de empresas, ¿no? Queremos priorizar a los titulares de derechos por sobre aquellos sedientos de ganancias y de rentabilidad, ¿no? Pero también este multilateralismo tiene que llegar a la toma de decisiones en cuestiones de gobernanza económica, ¿no? Que sigue siendo una competencia casi exclusiva de organizaciones dominadas por los grandes poderes. Y entonces la falta de atención a la expansión de un multilateralismo realmente democrático a esas áreas es central para poder atacar las crisis sistémicas en las que vivimos en estos días. Pero en definitiva, como decía al inicio de respuesta a esta pregunta, es importante construir estas respuestas, estos caminos, estas propuestas con la diversidad de pueblos y organizaciones articulados y que dan seguimiento a distintas agendas en distintos espacios de Naciones Unidas, de los que hay mucho que aprender y sobre los que hay que articular. Y para eso es que nos vamos a reunir a fines de esta semana en Nueva York para intentar analizar cómo está el sistema actual, pero también ver cómo articulamos la construcción de propuestas colectivas para lograr transformar esa realidad. Gracias.
Gracias, Martín. Anita, why is an accountable governance regime for artificial intelligence an urgent imperative?
I think this is among the questions that really brings a lot of ambassadors and the permanent missions many sleepless nights, because you need to really sit there and start thinking about what to do to govern artificial intelligence and how the UN can really set the rules of the game in a way by which, as mostly transnational companies will like to tell you, not spoil the future prospects of innovation, so that we really don't govern for mitigating harm, minimizing harm, but we govern in a way that can enable corporate innovation. So much of the narrative here that Silicon Valley loves to venerate is all about, let's not stop innovation, let's not govern in a way that will stifle innovation. This mainstream discourse is really not where we should be looking. I think we need really to critique this approach that all solutions must be found on scale. There must be a one-size-fits-all. Solutions through big data have to be homogeneous. Large language models and generative AI are rescuing the world. All these are actually myths. So machines are not sentient, right? They're not really able to interpret, understand, and show compassion, have the kind of reflexivity that's needed to govern societies, right? So we need to put the spotlight back on the here and now of how we are going about developing AI. And this is particularly important because AI is not that thing that lies in products or devices or in our laptop. AI is altering the ways in which our production systems, our democratic systems, our governance systems are all transforming. So AI is a kind of an essential ingredient, and it really needs to be governed in a way that restores accountability for harms, reclaims public benefits, and recenters social value. And therefore, it's not only about fixing discrimination in input data sets, getting your trial data sets, training data sets to be more diverse. All of these technical solutions are only partial. What is really important is people's control over the institutions that govern AI. We really need to look at the exploitation of those who label data in the AI value chain. We need to look at communities whose lands are ravaged on account of the mining of rare earth minerals for specialized chips. We really need to look at the energy and water consumption of data centers that I spoke about. And we really need to understand how sociality is getting polluted because of greed and profit, where, clicks are just enabling profits, right? So we need a digital public sphere. We need digital democracy. We need economic justice in the digital realm, and we don't need lethal autonomous weapons in war zones. And this is why AI needs to be governed in a way that can address our present, so that future generations are not left to mop up the costs of all the risks that certain corporations decided to take today. Thank you.
Thank you. We do have one final question for all panelists, but I would just like to flag for everyone on the call that Jose Elosegui from Friends of the Earth International's comms team shared a press release in our chat box, including a link to some comms materials we want to share with you. So just wanted to put that out there for everyone. If you could take a time to take a look, that'd be awesome. But for our panelists, having listened to your critiques of the current multilateral system and the need to have an alternative system and spaces for civil society participation, I'd like to ask each of you, what do you envision for the future? What needs to be done to put power back in the hands of the people? So if you could each take a minute to elaborate. Anita, let's start with you.
Thanks much. I'll keep it quick. And I think to put power back in the hands of the people, we need to center the idea of systemic accountability, acknowledge that we need a radical shift in the rules that can bring the margins to the center. What does this mean? It includes regulating the market. We should erase the idea that, for instance, digital systems are ungovernable, Secondly, we need to restore the public. Today, the public is really delegitimized, right? Public institutions, public universities, public libraries. We need to really restore the public. And finally, we need to reclaim the idea of distributed power that the original promise of the internet really brought forth. And the materialities of the technology, the actual nuts and bolts of the technology today allow you to distribute power. So go ahead and do it.
Thank you. Martin? What is your answer?
Well, in 1 minute, the challenge. But I think that I was saying that we need to really think out of the box and beyond this realpolitik thing, and try to have a vision that is based on justice, not again, sorry, I started speaking English, mamma mia. So I'm going to change. Decía, mil disculpas, empiezo nuevamente. Decía que necesitamos pensar más allá de la realpolitik y construir basados en principios de justicia y no de beneficencia, donde corporaciones o billonarios nos dicen qué proyectos tenemos que financiar, qué iniciativas hay que promover. Por lo tanto, necesitamos un sistema multilateral con fondos suficientes en que los estados aporten acorde a sus capacidades y que sea el propio sistema el que defina cómo se gastan esos fondos. Un sistema en el que haya claramente controlado por representantes de estados, pero en el que haya espacios formales para la participación de la sociedad civil, con fondos para esa participación. No es una participación que se pueda hacer de manera sin dinero, es muy difícil generar esos espacios de diálogo, y tenemos que trascender también estos espacios de diálogo solo virtuales para los espacios, la vieja escuela de la negociación política, digamos, de cara a cara. Entonces ahí se requieren fondos para eso también, y salir un sistema multilateral que salga del agotamiento, digamos, en que lo tienen los grandes países con la reducción de fondos que entregan para que haya que ceder a los fondos de las transnacionales o los billonarios para tener fondos para poder hacer cosas, ¿no? Pero también me parece una cosa muy importante que decía Anita, esto de recuperar lo público, ¿no? La centralidad de lo público, y diríamos recuperar la centralidad de la política en manos de los pueblos y en manos de los representantes de los pueblos, y no de los CEOs o billonarios. Y en definitiva también recuperar la economía, ¿no? Una economía al servicio de los intereses de las mayorías, y no de los grandes poderes. Entonces, pero de vuelta voy a decir lo que dije antes: este es un camino que hay que construirlo con la mayor diversidad posible de organizaciones y miradas, y hacia eso intenta aportar este encuentro que hacemos jueves, viernes y sábado en Nueva York, para construir caminos conjuntos esa transformación central, como decía Nick. Gracias.
Thank you. And finally, Gonzalo, what is your vision
Yeah,
for
thank
the
you very
future?
much. I guess that we, as social movement, civil society, activists from the progressive fields, field in the world, because we are talking about the world, have to commit, and we have a clear task that is mostly to first to make our people understand that the problem of a global government is a problem that is impacting us, and if we don't solve that, I mean, if we don't work or we don't take care of that, and we put that in our political platforms, we are delaying the solution of many problems. Of course, there are many solutions, many proposals that have been put there of global parliaments, citizens assemblies, and many as such, including the reform of the UN. But I guess that it's clear that what we really need is a truly democratic global government, or earth government, the way you want to call it. The one that was set in 45 is not perfect at all democratic system, because it includes the veto power of some countries, and that condition every democratic exercise. So we should start with deepening a democratic, or working for a real democratic government for the world. And I'm not saying government because it's out of my mind, because what I think is that we, by using simple words as this one, people would understand what we are talking, or will understand what we are talking about when we refer to multilateralism. That seems to be something not understandable for the people. And then the democracy is the key. Democracy is under the threat of two blocks of enemies, let's say. One is the corporate power, that is privatizing democratic procedures at national but also at international level, and we have to focus our political action into that. That's our task. And the other task is to stop the advance of the far right, that is an authoritarian threat to our democracies. So these are the tasks. As I said, there are many proposals there. We have to study which one we like, we prefer, but our people has always been super in formulating proposals and imagining other ways of living in a more plural, democratic, and respectful way. So that's what we are committed to, and New York, as Martin said, is a moment in that journey that we started years ago, and we are committed to follow that in the coming years. Thank you.
Thank you. At this point, we would like to open for questions. If you do have a question, you could raise your hands and I'll call on you as I see hands raised. If you could state your name and organization, that would be very helpful. Thank you. So do we have any questions from the participants? A minute. No, short and sweet. Great. Well, if there are no questions, oh, sorry. From Natalia Carrao, de redes, thank you. ¿Podrían explicar cuáles son los cambios más riesgosos que propone el pacto? I believe, Martin, if you would like to take that question, or Gonzalo.
Yeah, I can start if you want. Yeah, Basically, as we have been following, as Gonzalo was saying, we have been following this process since the very beginning. And was clear at the very beginning that the pact was promoting, among other issues that maybe Gonzalo can go more in depth, is this the expansion, as I said, no, the legalization, legitimization of the multi-stakeholderism. No, then we think that after a lot of efforts we have made and advocacy on G77 and plus China countries and other southern countries, we have succeeded to take that concept out of the pact, but the frame of the transformation of the multilateral system toward a multi-stakeholder approach is already there, not with the wording, but with the frame, and that's maybe the most dangerous thing in terms of the frame, no? In terms of trying to, what we have been saying along the different questions, it's already there, no? So it's a lot of putting the whole UN Secretary General plus UN machinery to promote and build on that. And then we know it's not it's not a legal, nothing gonna be transformed legally from after the summit, but the narrative promote the strength of, or the power, let's say, of the summit, promoting a narrative that can land strongly at national, regional, and other UN agencies is there. So whatever is out of this summit can have a lot of impact, but maybe Gonzalo can enter more in details of the pact.
Hola Natalia, gracias por la pregunta. Yo creo que el problema del pacto es justamente que no se mueve ni para atrás ni para adelante y que eso en definitiva es un retroceso en términos de la urgencia de las políticas a nivel global que tenemos, que el mundo necesita. En ese sentido es un retroceso, porque o sea, promete, pero no se compromete. Así podemos describir la realidad de este pacto. Es una respuesta vaga, con muchos detalles, es verdad, porque el problema es complicado, pero que no se compromete a nada. Entonces, en ese sentido, es verdad que podría ser peor, pero creo que no hay nada peor que la inmovilidad a la que en la que está inmersa el sistema multilateral y que hace que la solución a los problemas reales de que vivimos, entre ellos el clima, el hambre, las migraciones violentas, la guerra y otros, no se resuelvan. Y en ese sentido, estamos en la misma.
Thank you, Martin and Gonzalo. Are there any further questions? You can also write them in the chat.
I just wanted to add to Natalia that, the Global Digital Compact also ignores social, economic, and cultural rights. And in fact, one of the strongly contested aspects was about internet shutdowns, where many member states took strong objection to a human rights-based, a necessity and proportionality-based approach to censoring on the internet. So I agree with Gonzalo. I think freedoms are not only under threat, but we seem to be slipping back.
Thank you, Anita. Okay, if there are no further questions, then I would just like to remind everyone again of the press release that Jose kindly shared in the chat and the comms materials. So when you get a chance to take a look at that, feel free. Otherwise, a huge thank you to our three panelists for delving into these topics and themes and tackling this issue. And thank you to everyone, all participants, for taking the time on this Monday to join our call. And yes, happy Monday to everyone. Thank you.